And I think we good to go for real.
And point and shoot.
I'm just gonna powder my nose and we can go ahead.
All right, hi everyone. Good morning, thank you all for being here. My name is Jonathan, and I am the editor-in-chief of Cero magazine. We, along with Future Coalition, are one of the presenters of this exhibition, along with these two panels this weekend. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are currently on the stolen land of the Lenape people, and that I would like to thank everyone for being here, and also especially to Thomás, who is moderating today and also played an instrumental role in helping put this shoot together with photographer Carlos Jaramillo and stylist Marcus Correa. A huge thank you also to all of you for being here and being a part of this panel. Thank you to the Shed for hosting us, and also to our very generous donors. So with that, I will let Thomás take it away.
Thank you. My name is Thomás Lopez Jr. I come from the land of the Arapaho Shoshone Territory, also known as Denver, Colorado. I am one of many grandchildren of Chief of Chiefs Leonard Emmanuel Crow Sr. My father is Sundance Chief Thomás Lopez Sr. and my mother is Waterwoman Sharon Dominguez. So excited to be here with you all today. As you can see, we're here to celebrate all of the many communities that we were able to uplift through this project, and also the individuals and the leaders that the communities have championed to be in this spaces. One of the things that people need to understand about these people is they did not ask to be in this. They were chosen not only by us, but also by the communities that they serve. And so these really are the people that they've chosen to represent them. They've chosen to speak on behalf of them. And really excited to be here with you all today. There's a lot of different themes that run through this project that really paint a truthful and authentic picture of what the climate crisis truly is, and also painting the picture of that the climate crisis has been going on since since first contact with colonial folks from different parts of the world, including Europe. As people of the communities that we come from, a lot of these issues that are being put into the media now and are being uplifted are things that we have been dealing with for hundreds of years. They're things that our communities have been trying to fight and identify for a very long time, and it's barely now that people are actually listening to us and giving us the platforms and the space that we require to continue doing the work that is in our DNA, is in our ancestral knowledge, is written literally in the stars and in our earth itself. So everything that we do, it really is not a career path, it's not a career choice, it's a way of life. We live this way. This is who we have to be in order to exist in this world. I have a little notes today because I've been woohooing a bit too much the past few days, so bear with me. My voice is also a little raspy, so forgive me. But I want to go ahead and just start by having everybody just introduce themselves, where you come from, who you are, and I also want to ask you to answer the question of just, oops, so sorry. What does intersectionality mean to you, and what does it look like in the work that you are doing in your communities? And we're gonna go ahead and start with the young person that kicked off the entire project. One of my mentees, my younger sibling, Tochtli.
Hello. My name is Atlakatl Tochtli. Masawa Ranamuri Chicano. Born and raised in Tatavium lands, which is also known as San Fernando. The San Fernando Valley is part of the greater LA area. So coming from Southern California. Yeah, happy to be here with everyone today. To answer the question about intersectionality. Definitely, like, everything that's here right now is intersectionality to me. Also, I feel like one of my most, like, beloved responsibilities I know that I'm here for is, like, the weaving of our movements, and I feel like really centered in the networks that do exist, and that we have the ability to learn from each other's histories and stories and places that we come from. So without that, I would be completely lost. You know, without that, would not know how to resist, and I'm grateful that we can move around and connect in the ways that we are. So, yeah, thank you.
Hello, Cero. Sego Soiguego, Makaśa gets Ginikahago Nyogo Hojona, Wakatahuni, Six Nations Nidogeno. Hi everybody, my name is Makaśa. I am from Six Nations community. I'm Mohawk, Wolf Clan, and Lakota. I wear a lot of hats within my community, and my dad is Chief Arvo Looking Horse, Chief of the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota nations in South Dakota. My mom is Dr. Dawn Martin Hill. She is a professor and a trailblazer in her own right, and they just gave me the most amazing childhood, and that's how I learned to navigate. And when we are posed with the question of what is intersectionality mean to us, I think that it relates back to what we say when we're in ceremony or when we're done smoking our chanupas, and in our gathering spaces, is that we're all related. And that means, and that's Matakiwe Orozco in our language, in the Lakota language. And that means, it means a whole lot in itself, and that can come into our work too. And that's working and having relationships with our communities and our elders and our youth, but then also with our allies and the people around the world. And it also means, when we look at how Indigenous knowledge is, it's looking at that everything is related. Everything is related to water, everything is related to health. And when we look at the water and we look at our people, they're one and the same. And when our water isn't healthy, then our people aren't healthy. And so that's really what intersectionality to me is having everything woven and interconnected with each other. And that's how Indigenous knowledge is, and that's how we work. And that's what I can say. And when we lead different projects, everything is really related, and everything relates to the youth, everything relates to our elders. We can't have our youth without our elders. And it's all related, so it's all interconnected, interwoven, and co-created. And that's how indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing and ways of being works. Yeah.
Aloha mai kākou, o wau o Yvonne Mahelona, ko inoa, no nana kuli, Hawaiian homestead mai au. No ha'au ma Waipio, o Makua, Ku'upiko, Ku'uewe, Ku'ukoko. Aloha everybody, my name is Yvonne Mahelona. I'm from Nanakuli Hawaiian Homestead on the west side of Oahu. I currently live in central Oahu, Melilani, but the original name is Waipio. What is intersectionality to me? I think just to echo Makaśa, our ancestral knowledge, our ike kupuna is very much the same too, like everything is connected. And so I think of our ahupua system, from the tops of the valleys down to the ocean. The top of the valley, right, collects the water, and then it goes down in the streams into the lo'ikalo, or the taro patches, and then it goes down into the ocean to our fish ponds. And to have like the true health and well-being of both the land and the people, you cannot disrupt that system. And so just like the ahupua system, it's kind of like our own personal lives. If anything gets in the way of us receiving fresh water or food, a place to live, I think all these, right, social determinants of our health, it matters. And I think in each of our individual work, even though it may look different, it's all to restore that ahupua system, so to say. To remember the knowledge of our kupuna, our ancestors, to remember the ways that they lived in unity with everyone in the community, including the land, including the ocean people and the animal people. Because yeah, when we take care of the land, when we take care of our ahupua, that is what ultimately feeds us and keeps us well. So yeah, intersectionality is just, I guess, returning to our ancestral ways of being in community and how we show up, who we are, who we come from, where we're going. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sumaya Bouhbal. I'm from New York. I've lived all over the city, but I'm here to represent Washington Heights, which is where my activist journey really began. I'm the founder and creative director of the Young Lords Collective. My social media manager is here today. Shout out Saha. I am Haitian American and I am Tunisian. My father is an immigrant from North Africa. And to me, especially as a New Yorker, intersectionality means serving my community. New York is one of the most diverse places in the world, but it's also extremely segregated. And in order to truly unite the communities here, you have to understand each and every identity, why they connect, why they matter, and why we all have a stake in each other's liberation. So intersectionality, I feel, is humanizing the people around you, humanizing yourself, and figuring out from there how we can achieve equality.
Hello, my name is Brittany Woods-Orrison. I'm Koe
Dene woman from Atlakatl. This is my community, some of my cousins, and many. Intersectionality, we've always been connected. In visiting my Tlingit relatives, they have stories of traveling to Hawaii pre-colonialism and being part of a reparation project from my college. When we returned the Tongva relatives, we found ivory tools in the mix of things that are from my community, and being connected to a Maya Yucateca woman who lives in my community, is my community. In her lands, they found an Alaska Native woman from a long time ago, and decolonization has learned. It's me learning that we've always traveled, we've always had amazing experiences together and been so deeply responsible to the land. And in doing that again, I grew up in the village before we were forced to relocate because the government did not want to fund rural schools, Alaska Native schools. And moving into this city, being surrounded by people from all walks of life, and then going to a state-funded boarding school with Native students from all over, people from all over, I grew more responsible and amazed by what our people did to survive such extreme lands and do it with so much beauty, eating good, looking good, laughing all the time. And when I went to college, I was one of the only Native students and one of the only person from Alaska, and my community was Black, Peruvian, immigrant, all different walks of life, of different abilities, and getting to know them and seeing how connected we are, and how we were never supposed to survive, how we were never supposed to be here, and being here and so loud, and they gave me my voice. And so being a part of this group and having so much love, it only grows deeper, it only grows my voice, and I'm so excited to see what happens as we come out of survival mode and we show people that there's a way to live with all of us and with so much love. So that's what intersectionality is to me.
What's good, y'all? Can we take a breath together real quick? Inhale. Exhale. What's happening, everybody? My name is Victor Allen Weeks from the west side of Atlanta, Zone 4, SWATs, Cascade. I'm the son of Cotina Victoria Singleton and Antoine Canales Weeks. Came here with my partner, them Jennifer, from the west side as well. Grew up outside. Even though Atlanta's a city, I was first introduced to really appreciating the green space that existed within the city by my 4th grade teacher. We went on a hike through the Cascade Springs Nature Preserve in Lionel Beecher, Hampton Park, and knowing that these places were right down the street, I could bike there, I could walk there, like all my homies, we could meet there safely. That was something that was immeasurable, was priceless. And it began from there, and to be able to be taught and to continue to learn, pass that knowledge on and teach, it's just the beauty in that reciprocity. Intersectionality is that collective breath that we took together. It's everybody coming together, recognizing that we utilize a lot of the same things that we were given. So it's appreciating how we all can take care of those things in community, which isn't one specific location, but it's, as we travel, we get to bring that with us. As the water flows, it brings more sediment, which creates sedimentary rock, different minerals, different gems, all those things compound with time, with history. And it's being able to appreciate all those aspects that get carried with the water, that get compounded over time. And that's intersectionality to me.
Mic 1. Thank you so much. That breath felt really good. I think I needed it. So for many years, I feel like I was fed the idea that climate activism had to look like a very specific thing. And a lot of that misinformation that I was given led to me being in some really interesting places that I didn't quite love and didn't spark joy. And now what I'm realizing is that activism, whether it's in climate or any other space, as we're talking about intersectionality, actually looks like so many different things. And like when we say ahomitakwe o yasin, that means every side of that medicine wheel, every side of that circle. And how many sides of a circle are there? It's almost infinite. And so that's how many ways there are to be an activist. That's how many ways there are to fight these things. It doesn't always look like a fight with your fists that are closed. That's one way to fight. That's certainly one way to fight, and you can choose to engage in that. I've done it a few times this week almost, So I'm just kidding, but it's real. We make these choices, and each one of these young people stands on a different side or a different perspective of that. And at different times of your life, you will move to other sides. You will never stay quite in one place. You will always have to meet the needs of where you are at in that moment. And so one question that I have for you, Makaśa, is what does your activism look like? What does it look like in your community and in your life?
Hello. Thank you, Thomás, for that question. When I think about what does activism look like, it looks like our teachers who are teaching our Mohawk and Cayuga languages to our youth. It looks like our traditional medicine people who are teaching classes on how to maintain our ways of life. And it looks like our chiefs and clan mothers teaching about our ceremonies, about our treaties, about our ways of being, and how our people work in our knowledge and our traditional knowledge and ways of being. It looks like my mom, who has taught as a professor in Indigenous Studies for the last 35 years. It looks like so many things. It's infinite on what activism really looks like, especially within Indigenous communities, because we were never really supposed to be here. That's why our reserves in Canada and in the U.S. have no clean drinking water. That's why they're called reserves. That's why we have a lack of housing and funding, because we were never supposed to survive the genocides and the boarding schools and the 60s scoop. We were never supposed to be here, and activism is just being here, and not only that, but making changes and standing up for our waters and for our rights. And it just looks like so many things, and anybody can be an activist and trying to, in their work, trying to create spaces for Indigenous voices, because to be honest, we're not really in the media. We're not really walking down the runways and vote. We're not being seen on billboards. It's called erasure. Because we're really, Canada is my home state, and we have hundreds of nations within Canada, but where are they? Where is the artwork? Where is, when you walk into a building, are we there? Or where are we? So I think anybody can make spaces for Indigenous peoples especially, and use their voices and create space, especially as allies. Yeah.
And I know that this is just something I would like to ask about. You did a project with some of the marine the turtles in your rivers. Could you just talk a little bit about that work? And I think there's a lot of young people who are very interested in STEM and how STEM and indigenous knowledge can come together to really do some very beautiful work. So I would just like for you to talk about that a little bit, if you could.
Yeah, I'd totally love to. My mom has this Omeganos water research project that has been going on for the last 5 years. And we look at Six Nations water. And we found out that we have this whole water system, and that's our treaty lands. And we have a lot of cities upstream, and all of that pollution comes downstream to where we are, and we have about 40 dams within the river system, and we are at the bottom, and that leaves our water where we are very stagnant, where we are on the river, our reserve, and there has never been any kind of data collected within our reserve region, and so our project that is co-created with so many different departments and sciences. We asked the chiefs what they want us to do, and so they said they wanted us to use the turtles because the turtles know how to navigate the waters the best. They are the best indicators to see if water is healthy or not healthy. And so we put sensors to see what our ecology and what our water is like, to see the health of the water for ourselves. And so we are able to put those sensors on turtles' backs. And actually my partner was a part of that. Randy's right here. Because he's a professional rattle maker, because rattles are a huge part of our culture, turtle rattles. And so he's able to catch them snapping turtles right out of the water with his bare hands and carry 2 right out of the crate and without a problem. And so we work with our community hunters and knowledge keepers like Randy, we're able to work, the scientists were able to work with them to put the sensors on there. And we haven't been able to get that data back. We just sent it to the lab. So, but yeah, those are some really exciting things that our project is doing. And those are some really awesome things that Indigenous people can be doing within STEM, because STEM is a huge way to, it aligns with Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing very well. Now a lot of people don't really think about, I feel like, that those opportunities are there, and they align very well with our ways of knowing.
Thank you so much, Makaśa. So that brings me, segues kind of into the next topic. And if you guys want to answer any questions that you didn't get to, feel free to. This is not, you know me, we're relaxing on here. But as you said, a lot of, all of where our homes are at as Black and brown people are so intentional. You do not, we are not where we are at by accident, right? They put us in places that were the most difficult to survive in, and here we are. So there's that, but with that also comes the notion of forced relocation and fighting to not only return to home, but fighting to return to whatever home is now. The truth is that sometimes home is no longer there, and you then have to figure out what home is now, and that's another part of what's great about being Indigenous sometimes is other peoples open themselves up so that you have home, you have that still, and that's something really beautiful. But I want to actually look over to Brittany to talk a little bit about your experience and where you come from with relocating and your fight of returning home.
I'm thinking about so many people who I'm an accomplice to across my state, and I'm thinking about what it's like growing up in a community with no running water, which is true to this day, which is so many of our communities still face. I'm thinking about my relatives in Sitnasauk or Nome, Alaska, that are trying to stop the world's biggest open pit mine, which is 30 miles from the community. Thinking about my sister on the Kuskokwim River, trying to stop Donlin to protect one of the last salmon runs in that region that feed our whole state. Up north, where they have the Willow Project and the community is already surrounded by these big gas leaking projects. And it's been like this for so many generations. And, you know, I didn't learn about Project Chariot, which was supposed to be a nuclear bay 30 miles from the community. I didn't learn about the duck-in when they told the native people they weren't allowed to eat the only food source for that time. And it's so much. And, you know, this has had to be on my own learning time because my people are trying to survive. We're trying to do the day in, day out. My family did not talk to me about these things. I had to go to college and ask these questions and be alone in all of this grief. And I also returned my body to home now and thinking about how much love I had growing up. My grandparents raised me, my great-grandparents raised me. I was able to walk on the land, and you know, it's a hard life hauling water and doing dishes and heating that up. And if there's a medical emergency, having to fly a plane in and living in these extremities. But one time I was working so hard, and I remember my mom looking at me and like, this is really hard work, but we have so much purpose and we have so many people to take care of. And being forced to relocate and like still finding community and like so much love wherever I go. And growing up and noticing, I understood what colonialism before I knew what it was. I would ask like, why are we struggling with alcoholism? Why aren't my relatives, why don't I know my language? Why don't I know my practices? And being so young and like wanting to, just as I grew up, I was like, one day I want to like do stuff for my language. One day I want to learn how to make snowshoes. One day I want to like go to these different communities and learn from people. And it was just like one little wish at a time, one little wish, and just dreaming. And you know, I went on this like long journey of my education bringing me further away from home, but like growing my network and learning about how we all have this place-based identity and this like deep love for our food and the animals that give themselves to us. And I was living in the Bay and I was unemployed and I was like on the soul-searching journey. I'm like, I need to find a life of alignment and reciprocity. And I was like, I'm not going to apply to any jobs until I find a career that is bringing back to my community. And now that's very an extensive word for me. I mean, I feel community here. I'm like, I got family here now. And it was like this really big wish, and my mom had forwarded me this role for a broadband specialist with 2 organizations, ACPERG and Native Movement, and I was like, what's broadband? I don't even know what that is. And I had to like look up about the internet, I had to like look into this job, and when I realized what internet would do in Alaska, I was like, wow, I get to work on everything I wanted. And for context, most of our communities don't have access, like most communities don't even have phone service. You have to call 40 numbers just to call outside. And I know people who are paying $1,300 a month for internet that can't open an email. These are the circumstances in which Alaskans are trying to fight all of these horrible powers that are trying to destroy our land, and we're still doing this work. And so in 2021, when I started this role, I also had my first modeling experience for an all-indigenous show, runway show, and I also got connected with my cousin Rodney again after a long time apart, and we took a film class together, and then I started this job, and I say all this to be, we can make this work however we want. Whatever we do is critical to our community, and it has impacts in ways you can never guess. And when you follow your passions, and when you are guided by your ancestors, and when you're loyal to your people, you will do work that is for you and for them. And so I'm connected to so many different things through the internet in Alaska, and now I have relatives in Canada I'm doing this work with, and I'm learning how to tell these stories online, and I get to wear beautiful jewelry by my community and from other communities, and I'm like, this is still work. I'm working right now. So it is really whatever you want. I just follow your passions.
Thank you. And so, Tochtli, I know you have worked in many communities in LA, and living in LA, forced relocation is just, it's an issue that you do not have an option to see. And I would just like for you to speak on your experience with that as well, if you could.
Hello. So, yeah, there's definitely like a strong need and a lot of actions and efforts that exist in LA for like community-driven spaces, cultural sanctuaries, creative sanctuaries, and my family's history in LA is somewhat recent. So, on my father's side, my grandfather, my grandmother came over around like the 60s, and for my mother, she came when she was 3, and all in the Sacramento Valley, and eventually, like, everyone crosses paths and generations happen, but I'd say a lot has like transpired with finding a home there, and that really looks like being in community with other Native families in LA, of First Nations families, of Tonga families, Quiche, Chumash, surrounding Indigenous communities, and having the ability to like create that to be guests there, and to also like be moving through accomplishments together. So where there wasn't like cultural programming for the youth 5 years ago, there is now. With my cousins are in that, it's just interesting too. When it comes to like having a home, my story in TOKALA is like really tied into that. Now I've like adapted to being able to carry sanctuary with me, but I'm grateful to know that I do have many homes, and but the need for housing justice in LA is so real and so pressing, and it is possible. And like if we had never taken it upon ourselves as collectives of families to reclaim those vacant homes owned by the state for housing for our families. There wouldn't be as much effort that is there now, like from the city and the state and Caltrans to create these like low income housing options out of these homes. And although it is moving very slow, like we were a catalyst for that. But not only were we a catalyst for that, we other housing justice movements around that same time, us being inspired by others before. And so when I was regretting it all at one point, because I'm like, dang, I'm gonna go to jail. I just had to remember that like, nah, we do by example, we learn from each other, and like we make an effort.
Yeah, the truth is that you really cannot have a conversation about climate justice without having the conversation of forced relocation. Because the truth is that, and this happens everywhere, they move people to what they see as unuseful land that has no purpose. We as people that come from the earth understand that there is no such thing. Every piece of the earth has purpose. So they force us into the corners they don't seem worthy for their palace. And then years go by, hundreds of years go by, they catch up with indigenous knowledge, and then they say, actually, we want that. Actually, we found out with our science that it's valuable, so we're gonna take it. And we have all these laws that we've been writing for the last 100 years to legally do it. So we have to have those conversations. Gentrification is a climate issue. Like the idea of it's old, we don't need it anymore, knock it down, build something new. It's a part of it. It's consumption. It's an addiction to continuing to consume. It is ravishing the earth. And when you see a lot of the forced relocation, and when you see people being put in places where the use of that land is not necessarily to grow food for us, what you also begin to see are things like food insecurity. And you begin to also see the way that food insecurity not only affects us as one part of the chain of life, but you also begin to see how it affects the plants, the animals, the air, the water, the fire. All of these different things get affected. But I really would love to pass this question to you, Sumaya, to talk a little bit more about what you're doing in terms of food sovereignty in a place that is so contrasted to Six Nations or the Panelists. Like, what is your experience here with that, and what are you doing to address that issue?
Yeah, so like I said before, New York is super racially segregated, and so I really got my start as an activist in racial spaces. And so when I started distributing food in 2021, I didn't know I was doing climate work, and even when I was asked to be part of TOKALA, I still felt that like imposter syndrome of like, oh, but I'm not Greta on a boat, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like doing this, but I reconnected a lot with my dad. And my dad, like I said, he's from Tunisia. We are indigenous Africans. In the West, they say Berber, we say Amazigh, which means free man in our language. And in talking to him, I kind of like realized what I was doing and why, and how like my parents and the ancestral knowledge that's been passed down to me as a North African, as a Muslim African, truly informs the work that I do. My dad is from Tunis, and over there, like, it's just tradition to be urban farmers. Like, now it's like a thing, like, oh, you're an urban farmer, and it's like a cool thing to be, but that's just how they survived. And we started the food distribution, my organization, because of work that I was doing during Ramadan and Zakat to give meals to people who can't eat. And I just realized that, like what everyone else is saying, like, we've always been climate activists and we've always done the work. And with the food distribution, it's not the main thing or the only thing my organization does, but it's something that we continue to do. This year during the month of Ramadan, we filled up more fridges than we ever have. We've done a fridge every single week. Sometimes we did 2 fridges. We did them in 2 different boroughs, so we got really, really far. And yeah, it's just about, like, in the Heights you can't grow your own food. There's a river and you can't fish in it. All of the fish are toxic. And 1 in every 3 people in the Heights experiences food insecurity, mostly children. And that was heartbreaking for everyone in my organization, and we just wanted to do something about it. And we wanted to, there's one of the biggest issues in the Heights, self-proposed by the people in the community, is land use. People in the Heights feel like the land is just not being used for the right things. When I first lived there were empty lots everywhere. Now all of those lots have been bought and they're being turned into, like, all of this luxurious housing. But it's like all of that could have been used for community gardens. All of that could have been used for what we now call urban farming, which our ancestors have been doing since before we ever came to this land, for those of us who are not Indigenous American. So, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, hello. Okay, there we go. Next I would love to pass this to my brother Victor on the end here to talk a little bit about, I mean, you do almost a dual, like, form of farming. You are not only in an urban place, but actively working with a very rural place as well. A rural place that, I feel like sometimes we think that, like, I guess Black people don't live in rural communities, that they must just live in cities, but there are actually Black folks that live in places that are just like our Indigenous communities. There is very little access to electricity, running water, hospitals, medical attention, and honestly, I felt like when I was in Sapporo, like I was on the res, and I just loved it. It was amazing, but coolest thing ever. So I'd love for you to just talk about how you've been able to do that and merge the 2 worlds together like that.
For sure. I'd like to even bridge that question, so a previous question about finding our way back home. So, like I said, I'm from the west side of Atlanta. As I grew up to have more conversations with my grandparents, my cousins, my aunties, like all them folk, I learned that, okay, yeah, we from Atlanta, but you got family down in Sandersville, Georgia, which is the sticks as well, down in Macon, down in Valdosta, down in Savannah, in McCullochville, South Carolina, and down in Savannah, Georgia, and noticing how the African diaspora has moved from, at least specifically this region, from the Senegambian region in West Africa to the Sea Islands of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and Florida, then noticing how that migration extended outward into the South and then into the North and the Midwest and the West. I'm like, okay, where do my folks come from? And so I had more questions. I was inquiring and being able to visit with more people. The map naturally brought me back to at least where I can recognize where some things started. And so, growing up just practicing environmental stewardship in the green spaces and the parks at my high school with the Urban Agricultural and Horticulture Society, and then going to Davidson College, ended up taking a course. It's called African Healing and Religion in the American South, taught by Dr. Tracy Hucks. We had a field study component, we went down to Low Country, Georgia and South Carolina. Sapelo Island happened to be one of these spots. And Sapelo Island is one of Georgia's 13, I believe, barrier islands, also called the Golden Isles. And there's this location, there's this spot, there's this community called the Hog Hummock Community. It's one of, I forget the exact number, but many hummocks that were all around the island, all around the 16,000 acres of the island. Between the 1930s and the 1960s, the owner of the island, R.J. Reynolds, consolidated all of those saltwater Geechee communities into the lowest topographical spot on Sapelo Island, which is where Hog Hummock resides now. It's officially 438 acres out of the 16,000 acres of the island. That community, the saltwater Geechee community members have less than that because there have been intrusions by the state, by other private entities and folks who just want equity in the stake of the land for themselves. So it's been a steadily encroaching on this land stewardship that the saltwater Geechee people have been performing for centuries. So I remember we went on the Low Country field study, and then our teachers was like, if you ever need any folks to come down and support, call us, we got you, we're gonna send some folks down. And a farmer, griot, storyteller, historian, Maurice Bailey Sr., that was the person who gave us our tour. He was like, all right, I'm gonna do that. A couple months later, Hurricane Irma hit the southeastern coast, and it brought a lot of damage to the historical architectural components of the island. And so Maurice Bailey Sr. called up the school, called up Davidson College, and was like, hey, yo, y'all say y'all could bring some people for it, right? And then, yeah, we just moved from there. I was able to work with the Bonner Scholars Organization, which I was a part of, and we were able to get funding to have a service blitz. And we were able to rally the troops, rally the folks to spend our fall break down there on Sapelo Island. Jennifer Thompson was one of those pioneer folks that came down for the service blitz. And and it was an unforgettable experience. One, just being able to work with community members to restore some of the things that they've been taking care of for years. To just hear them just shooting the breeze, just telling stories, like not even understanding all of the Geechee things they were saying, but just being present and experiencing that. It was something oddly familiar about it, even though I didn't really understand it. Jennifer had a really cute awareness and was like, hey, how do y'all get food here? It's an island. It's an hour drive south from Savannah, Georgia, and then 30, 45-minute ferry ride through the estuaries to get to the island. And had a lot of questions about food insecurity, and it was interesting because that's where we learned more about what our teachers and the academia calls participatory action research. But it's really just getting to know the folks that you're working with and making sure y'all on the same page before you just go in and do something. So we had several conversations with the people there. It was like, okay, this is an idea that we have, but how would it benefit y'all? What do y'all need? And what we initially thought would be a community garden turned into something that was able to utilize agriculture as a beacon, as a flag that kind of symbolized that the Geechee community is still here and existing. When you think about food, when you think about the recipes and culinary arts, and without no food, there's no society. If we didn't eat, we wouldn't be here, right? And how all this food and the ways of knowing through food has been passed down generation, millennia, like how that's still here and is strong and they've maintained that. We got to grow crops that illustrated that demonstrated that. So going back to Sapelo Island, like I said, it was kind of a way of finding my way back home and just being able to interact with like the youngest cats on the island, like kids 7, 8, like even 4 years old, and then like the elders, just like sitting on the porch or just driving down the road in their trucks and like meeting them at the fishing hole, just like telling stories. It was and you got no words for it, for real. But just being present and then bringing all the different aspects of what we're interested in and who we are as people. So bringing the photography and the videography aspect that I've been practicing since 13 there, it was really imperative to me to make sure that we was all on the same page and we was cool with it. It was weird because my professor was like, yeah, you can turn this into a research project, take a camera, start interviewing. That didn't sit well with me for real off the jump. I was like, nah, I don't want to do it like that for real. Because it felt very it wasn't right. But I'm thankful that we got the time to build those relationships with people. And then eventually it was like, oh no, yeah, you cool, you got the camera. It got to a point where if I didn't have a camera around, it was like, what's happening? We got stuff going on. So to have that doorway open and to kind of be welcomed back as family members each time we go back to have folks, like nobody goes hungry on the island. You come, like, you got food, gonna go fishing, gonna go get the oysters, like you got fruit trees, like what you need, like there are hogs out up in the woods, we're gonna go get something, what you need, we're gonna eat. I forget the original question, but I think I meandered to hopefully like bring some light up upon what we've been doing.
The food that we ate in Sapelo was amazing. I actually really, this question can also be kind of posed in a way, a form of resources insecurity, not necessarily food insecurity. And one place that I really saw that just like plain as day right in your face was when we were in Hawaii, in Honolulu. I think a lot of us growing up, you have this idea of Hawaii as like, surf's up, bro, you know what I mean? Like these kind of like this touristy, like weird, like hula girls and like just this really violent depiction of what Hawaiian culture is. And the sad thing is that very much so exists on the island. Like they sell it and they pump it in the big mainstream part of what it is. And then you drive just a little bit west onto the other side of the island and you can visibly see that that is not the culture. And you can visibly see that resources are not being given to communities. And the biggest difference between these two communities is, of course, skin color. Because once you go into the west side, everybody is gorgeously melanated. So I would love for you to speak a little bit about what you've experienced and that interaction that you've been forced to deal with your entire life.
So yeah, we say the same, like everybody thinks of Hawaii, and it's like the white man wrote in first Western contact, right? We are this fair maiden, fair island nation, with arms wide open, no top on, hula skirt, just waiting for you to come have your rest and your leisure. And there's two very different Hawaiis. And you've seen this with the Lahaina fires recently. So I'm from Oahu, but the fires happened in Maui. Sorry, I'm gonna get emotional. But these fires spread so fast, and there were families stuck on Front Street in Maui, jumping into the ocean to escape the fire, stuck in their cars, babies stuck in car seats. And the very next day, a scuba diving company, tour company, were in those same waters that people were in for hours to run away from the fire, where people died in the ocean. And that's just our reality. That's just what we live with as our humble, beloved Hawaiian homes, right? Our 8 humble islands. 25% of our lands are owned by the US military. And anywhere you find US militarism, anywhere you find imperialism, you will have tourism. And so yeah, for me growing up in Nanakuli Hawaiian homestead, I grew up in my great-grandma's house. There was 20 of us living in a 4-bedroom at one time, all the time. And even though like my great-grandpa, so I was raised by my great-grandma and my great-grandpa, even though he was in the military, we still had a hard time buying food. We still dealt with, you know, alcohol and drug use, and this is all over our community on the homestead. And there's those of us who have to work. We live that life, right? But we have to work in the tourism industry because that's what makes the money. That's where you're gonna make your money. For me as a birth worker and a grief worker, like I lack the resources to do my work. So it's all like, you pay me what you can and I got you, sis or sib. And so I work in the tourism industry too. And we live these 2 completely, maybe even more than 2 completely like different versions of ourselves at all times. And we're fucking tired. We're tired of everywhere we go. We see tourists having the time of their lives, and just treating us like they're in a zoo. It's fucking ridiculous. Like no sense of self-awareness, no sense of like, hi, I'm in your home. It's just, look at this native person out in the wild having to work or having a smoothie or whatever the fuck we're doing. Yeah, it's just annoying. And I feel like for me, I didn't grow up in activism work. I didn't grow up in movement works. I didn't grow up knowing my ceremonies, right? A lot of our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents have had to assimilate into these new systems because our colonization was very recent. It was not that long ago. And so I just lost where the hell I was going. But yeah, first, okay, I know where I was. I came back home. I didn't grow up in ceremony, didn't grow up in the movement, but I was always angry. And I seen my uncles were angry. My uncles are a part of like, when people say you go to Oahu, you don't go to the west side, it's probably because of my uncles. So that was the type of activism that I knew. That was the type of climate justice shit that I knew, right? Is like howlers, tourists coming to the west side, acting on any kind. Sorry, that means acting up. And you cannot do that. And then too, like my great grandma who raised me, we didn't have the name birth worker, we didn't have the name grief worker, we didn't have the name like, you know, because we assimilated, like we didn't call her a traditional healer, a traditional medicine woman, she was just Tutu Mahelona. And when I think back, now she was a community organizer. She was a solid pillar in our community. For anyone birthing, anyone grieving, She was a nutritional healer, a lay hand healer. She was a prayer warrior. She was all these things. And she could organize the hell out of our community and our family. Did I even answer the question? Oh my God. But yeah, I think, oh, also, freaking Red Hill. So there's, Oahu has like these big aquifers, and I want to say it's like the biggest out of all the eight islands, even though we're one of the smaller islands, we have the biggest aquifer. And so the US Navy stores their fuel tank, right, for the US Pacific Fleet, in case they want to go to China, they need somewhere to put their gas and their fuel. But these tanks, 250 million gallons of fuel, 100 feet above our biggest aquifer on Oahu. And in the end of 2021, and to be honest, probably years before that, because a Navy officer tried to like blow the whistle and be like, "Hooies, you guys gotta check the Red Hill fuel storage facility." And they're like, "Actually, girl, shh," and like moved her somewhere else. Like they actually relocated her to somewhere else in the country. But yeah, another example of like U.S. militarism and how they impact our home and our environment, and we still gotta see them in their uniforms every freaking day. They cause all kind of traffic. They think that driving in Hawaii is like driving in the mainland, and they drive all reckless. Like, we drive slow. Please slow down when you're in my town. Sorry, I'm all over, but I think I think that's it.
And this is something that you see everywhere, right? You see like the redlining of communities basically saying like, this is ours and this is yours. And the people who make those decisions are also the people who decide where the resources go. So what usually ends up happening is the more lighter complected, heavier pocketed side of the community will usually be the ones that get the infrastructure. They get the resources, they get the water filters, they make sure that they put the refinery down there, you know what I mean? Like, we don't want to see it, not on the golf course. So, you know, those are literally things that you see everywhere. You see it in Hawaii, you see it violently in Puerto Rico. I mean, it is rampant in Puerto Rico. And I just really, people have to understand those things when we see disasters like what happened in Maui, in Lahaina, and really it makes you understand what's really going on and why people are saying, stop coming here. Stop coming here. Like, people, you have to understand the history before you can really jump into those things. So we're coming toward the end of our panel, and I would love to end on a bit of a high note. So I just want to go down the line, and I would like for each of you to give preferably one, but maximum 3 words to describe the future of your community and the world that you are building and choosing to live in. And we're going to start with Victor Allen.
Indomitable spirit, compound. Patience, perseverance,
Sovereign, abundant, pristine.
My word is just empowerment. I hate how many black and brown kids in New York City feel like they have absolutely no power. And I started this by shouting out my team. More people arrived, so I just want to end by shouting out the Young Words Collective. Thank you, Maya, Idea, Sophia, Jillian, and Saha.
It's going to be more than 3 words, I'm so sorry. Land back, bodies back, and we are the ancestral homecoming.
I would have to say, I'll just say powerful, rebellious. We're gonna need some hardcore changes, and they're ready for it. Our youth are ready to make those changes and be the hope and be the future. Yeah, resilient, powerful, outspoken.
I lay land back for sure. Land back. And play. Not so big.
We often talk about a lot of very deep and painful things, and sometimes I feel like it can be really easy to just hone in on that, right? So to me, it's very important that when we do these things, that we always end on like, what is the future? What are we reaching for? What are we hoping for? We cannot just assume that the world is on fire and we're all gonna burn. We also have to understand that the world is going to end. The world has ended many times before. The world will end many times again. And you are just a part of that cycle. This is where we are at. And we will continue to move forward whether we want to or not. We don't have a choice. And so I just want to make sure that when we do these, I leave you with hope. I leave you with something to reach for, to continue fighting for, to inspire you and fill your cup. Because it's not just about what's been taken from us, it's about what we've reclaimed, it's about what we've held on to, and it's about what we have. And it's really important to lean into those beautiful things in life too, and understand the duality of this is that of night and day, and you have to have both in order to have the other. So now we have a few moments left with our time together, and we just want to open it up for anybody that has questions or anybody that has comments or wants to share anything. We'll take about 2 or 3 people if anybody wants to ask anything.
Hello, y'all. Anushi. Thank you for everything. I guess I kind of have more of a comment than a question with regards to STEM or STEAM. Being able to include the art form, I think, is also, when we're doing ecological work, reminding ourselves that all of the science that is used on Turtle Island is stolen. They didn't want to eat strawberries, right? They didn't want to eat tomatoes because that's red, that's the devil's food. But that's what we survive on, that's grandma medicine. So I think being able to also keep in mind that STEAM and including that art form is a way for us to heal, for us to play, for us to reconnect. And I think it also ties together that intersectionality in a way that queer bodies are also doing, right? We have art in everything that we do, and it is part of our identities also. So I think in all of the work that you all are doing and will continue to do, I think it's important when you're talking about the land, don't forget that our art forms, those rattles, it's more than just an artifact, it's more than something that the Smithsonian tries to house one day. It is our living memory of land and being able to still connect with it the way food is the first love of land.
Thank you. I just really want to emphasize what you said. My organization is an activist artist collective, and I oftentimes tell people that, and they're like, yeah, but pick one, what do you really do? And it's like, we really do both, and I think especially as a Black person, it's like, Black people do everything with art first. Whether it's like the spirituals that they were singing in the fields, or the braid patterns that we would braid into our hair so that we knew where to go when we escaped to freedom, like everything that melanated people do is with art. We lead with our hearts, and our hearts understand art. They understand music, they understand visuals, they understand beautiful words. And you truly cannot have activism without art. And any art that doesn't have activism in it is something that someone is trying to sell to you. That is not art.
Yeah, I misspoke earlier. I did not mean to say indigenous people knowledge can fit into Western science. I meant to say that we have our own indigenous science, and we have our own knowledge of our cosmos. We have our own knowledge of science, and we've had science for millions and millions and millions of years. So we are our own experts at our own science, and most of the time, Western science is trying to catch up to indigenous science, and most of the time, their science is stolen from our science or not credited. So I want to recognize that our indigenous peoples have our own sciences. We have our own ways of knowing and ways of being. It can look like many different things. For example, we are also working on a virtual reality, which actually came from, is like another art form, which came from our chiefs and clan mothers to relay science within our stories, within our creation stories. And so when you put on a VR headset, you are a sky woman, and you are falling, and you go through the different teachings within Sky World, and then fall down onto Turtle Island, and that's how Turtle Island is made, and that's how North America came to be. And so we have our own sciences, and we're doing that actively now, and it can look like so many different things, and it really is really beautiful, and what we can create when we merge and co-create together. Yeah.
I'd like to add an R to STEAM between the T and the E to make it stream, and the R represents reading, just because there's a lot of literature out there in academia, in our old traditions, and it's important to be able to assess the words, whatever language it is, so we can know those words for ourselves, challenge the soundness of those words, and also be able to just pass those words on as well. So that's my little tidbit.
No question. Oh, it looks like we have a question over here, young man in the brown.
Can you just quickly, each one of you, speak on maybe one photo on the wall that kind of connects to you and like the significance of that photo, just so people have a little bit more context of what they're seeing.
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that for me? Oh, okay. Sorry. My bad.
Alessandra's photo over there with Tochtli and the sky and the earth. Like, one of the smaller photos, the landscape. Oh, for sure. Yeah. So makes me think about my grandmother, and like it makes me think about the Chicano moratorium and her experience in that day, and it makes me think about my uncles throwing rocks at cops, and it makes me think about my family, and I just it's everything. So yeah.
So my photo is right here, the big one, right next to the door, and also right here, the longhouse in the fields. So the bigger photo, I'm actually wearing my traditional regalia, and we're known for race beadwork within my region and my people. And it's really, I thought it was super cool to have both my traditional regalia, but also like a Gucci dress on top of it. And so that's what that sheer is. And then behind me is Lake Ontario. And so I come from the Five Finger Great Lakes, and that is our territory. And I wanted to, it's significant because it's the third largest bodies of water within the world. However, within the last 200 years, settlers managed to contaminate all of our water systems. And it's really heartbreaking, to be honest, to knowing that this is all fresh water that you would be able to just go and drink without a problem. And all of our rivers were once fresh, and you'd be able to drink from them with no issues whatsoever. And we have an abundance of water, of beautiful, beautiful water. But it's contaminated. All of our top surface water is contaminated, and we cannot drink it. And we can't even really, within our river system that I was talking about before, we can't even swim in it because it's so severely contaminated. In our creeks, and we put water sensors in our creeks, and they eroded because it wasn't even like a high quality of water. It wasn't even water. So that's just how bad and severe our lakes and our river systems are now. And that's why my work is to protect our aquifer water that is being drained and being extracted from Nestle, like big corporations like Nestle. And they pay a permit of $500 a year and make millions and millions off of our water. And once that aquifer water is gone, it's gone forever, and we're not going to have any type of clean, fresh water left. And that's really the work that I want to do, is try to protect our aquifers from these big corporations and water extraction, and for future generations. For ourselves now, for my children, like, that's not that far down. It's really in my lifetime, happening right now. It's urgent, and it's really, I wanted to show that's that beautiful water, but we don't really have access to it. Land-based wise, like, we're not allowed to live anywhere near it, because that's not where reserve is located in zone, and that's not where essentially the government put us. And all of the water near it is all extremely expensive, and so we're misplaced from our freshwater bodies. I think I'll just leave it at that now.
So that's me over there, and this is Makua Valley. Mahalo Carlos, Uncle Carlos, because this is actually my favorite corner of Makua Valley, and her name is Ko'iahi. And so this entire valley, Makua Valley, is owned by the U.S. Army since the 20s. They pay there's a lot of military, right, bases, or like land like this that's totally empty, that the military leases from the state of Hawaii for $1 for 100 years. And so Makua Valley is important to me because me and my family, we're a fishing family, we're a surfing family, we are just all over ocean family, and so we camped here every summer of my life, and just hearing the stories from like my mom's generation of like, yeah, this valley used to be on fire every year. The U.S. military used Makua Valley as target practice. So they would either have their ships out in the ocean, unloading bombs into the valley, shooting their big fancy guns. We had a lot, this was a place of ceremony, it was a fishing village. They evicted Hawaiians out of Makua Valley in the from like the 20s to the 60s, I believe. Sorry, I'm so bad with dates. But they evicted Hawaiians who were fishing families from this valley. There were ahu, or altars, where we go to do ceremony, where we go to commune with our ancestors, where we go to make offerings to our ancestors and our deities. There were burial sites, and they used all of these as target practice. And even to today, we can't access the valley unless it's on a cultural, which these kupuna, these elders fought, like they took the US Army to Supreme Court in the 60s to the 80s, and they won for us to have cultural accesses in this valley, but we still need the military there. We need their UXO, or unexploded ordinances, brada, to like guide us on the tour so we don't step on things and blow up. And yeah, it's just, Makua is like very special to me and my community, to me and my family. I can't even imagine if I wouldn't be able to like swim in the ocean, to swim in the waters, because it's such a big part of my identity. So yeah, this is Makua Valley and Ko'iahi. I love her, and she loves me too. I think in my work, right, in our work, we say defend the sacred, or we say protect the sacred, and it's because the sacred protects us too.
I'm gonna answer this too really quickly. Alessandra and I are both from the same community, Commerce City, Colorado. It has it is the most polluted air quality in the US. It has the worst air quality in the US. At any given time in Denver, Colorado and Commerce City, you have high levels of hydrogen cyanide being pumped into the air, which causes complete neurological breakdown. We have the highest birth defects, asthma, emphysema, cancer rates in all of Colorado. And it's because of this picture in between Danielle and Brittany is a picture of the Suncor refinery. The Suncor refinery refines tar sands and basically pumps all of the tar sands from different pipelines from different places, pulls it all apart and takes out all of the worst parts of it and just throw it into the air, and then they refine it into oil that can be used for cars, for all of these different things. I drive past this refinery almost every day of my life. I have the fortunate, unfortunate luck of being able to purchase a house in my neighborhood again. It's a neighborhood of working Black and brown people, primarily undocumented Mexican people, and for a long time it was the shanties of Colorado, and now they want it, and they are violently gentrifying it, and it's also the home to what was the US arsenal. And so there's a lot of unexploded nuclear bombs in the ground, and they just kind of went ahead and made some weird laws allowing people to build homes on this land. And so they have disturbed all of that nuclear air, all of that nuclear material, and it is now in the air floating everywhere. And I think what people need to understand about things like this is that pollution, toxins, chemicals, they don't stop at county lines. Like, they don't care that you live in Utah and I'm in Colorado. They don't care that we're Commerce City and you're Denver. If Commerce City is polluted, Denver is polluted. If Colorado is polluted, New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, all of those surrounding areas are polluted. If they're polluted, then everything surrounding them is polluted, because it's about intersectionality and we're all connected. So when you disrupt one part of the chain, the rest of it pays the price.
I'm already getting emotional, thinking about what I'm gonna say, but I started my organization at a very hard time in my life. I was only 16 years old and going through the pandemic in New York, and it was horrible. People would be dead in their homes for a week, and their whole families would have to live around their dead bodies just because the city didn't care to help. And it was a horrible time to be a New Yorker. And I lived in Washington Heights with my brother, and I no longer live there because of rising rents and gentrification. And as we're on the topic of affordable housing, I just want you guys to know that this land right here, Hudson Yards, is the most expensive real estate in the world, okay? And before Bloomberg decided to turn it into the most expensive real estate in the world, it was supposed to be affordable housing. For my people, for New Yorkers. And when I was deeply suicidal, I would go to the park I'm picturing it, I'm all the way in the corner over there. And I would just dream of like something being worth living for. And that thing was like those people on the other side of the room over there, like, who loved me before I was the founder of the Young Lords Collective and who just wanted me to like find joy. And I was so grateful to them that I just wanted to be in community with them forever. And that's what we do. Now we are in community with each other forever. And so over there, that's a couple members of my organization, not all of us, on our friend's sister's couch. Next to my picture over there to the left is a picture of a fruit stand in the Heights. A lot of our fruit stands aren't as like bougie as the ones you'd see around here. They're usually just like graffiti vans that have like a lot of papayas in them. And that's exactly what you see, but this project means so much to me because still to this day, like, that park is the most important place that I've ever been to, and those people are like the most important people I've ever met. And I literally owe my entire life to the images that you see on the wall.
I'm honored that my TOKALA family gets to sit amongst my Left Needs family from all walks of life. This picture was taken at the airport. You can see the runway is made of rocks and dirt, and it's alongside the Yukon River, and we're currently experiencing a salmon collapse. We are salmon people. Our summers were spent 16 hours a day in the midnight sun. That picture is taken at midnight at the end of the day when we're experiencing sun all day. And I never thought my fish would go. I thought all of the rest of my summers would be spent at fish, and we no longer are able to fish, and so I want to bring that story here. And the power that Carlos and Thomás and Marcus, like, they traveled 18 hours to tell our story. It was a 12 hours of flight, a 3-hour drive on a dirt road, on a highway, and a 3-hour drive, and then 2 hours on a boat. Like, nobody does that. And I never thought I'd be able to tell my story in like this place, in this context with these people. And so I just hope my cousins get the chance to tell their story while wearing our regalia and to teach people a good way of living, because when we talk about these extractive stories, this don't even make sense financially. You know, in Alaska, these projects cost billions of dollars, and they cost environmentally much more than that. And I just dream of like the internet being able to give us stories, being able to tell our stories, and be able to sell our jewelry that we want people to wear, and to show up in government spaces with our regalia and our looks. And so the power of that was so far to travel, and I hope this continues, and like we all take the time to hear one another's stories, and there's so much richness.
Two photos for me. This one to y'all's left, Jennifer and I are in the pool in front of the Reynolds Mansion, which was formerly the plantation house of the Big House on Sapelo Island, going towards the south end, where the University of Georgia Marine Institute owns that part of the land, And the Reynolds Mansion, you can rent it out, but you have to rent out the whole spot, like all 16 rooms. And it's weird that it's a place of tourism when it's a beacon of violent upheaval of land stewards and defenders and folks who have created this mutualism with the environment, and to be with the whole Future Coalition squad that came through and to just pull up saying, we're not paying y'all to take these pictures, we just gonna be here and disrupt whatever y'all got going on, because as much stake as y'all say y'all got to be here, we got that same stake, if not more, like on the real. So it's brash and it's, I love that one. I'm glad that we were there and we just pulled up. And the second picture is right behind us. It's like all the faces, the elders and the youth, the intergenerational sharing of knowledge and experiences and compassion and love and bravery and fortitude. Like, I just can't help but feel hope and just like, it's a Boolean sensation of like, we got this. And there are young folks that are gonna know that they got this too. Despite how hard it may seem, it's never impossible. So that's for me.
Before we go, we have an offering from our sister here.
So I'm usually when things end right in this, it's very sorry. I mean, sorry to that water. When we talk about our homes, right, and why we love them and what we're fighting against, it's very heavy. Mahalo for sharing all of your stories with us. And the way that we ended in Hawaii is by working an oli, or a chant. And so this oli is called Kapihe's prophecy. And in this prophecy, he says, all that is being held down will be lifted up. Everything that is being held up right now will be teared down. And our islands, so not just the Hawaiian Islands, but I think what Marcus and Carlos and Thomás created, and all these beautiful, amazing people around these walls in this room with us. I think that's what, a part of what Kapihe was saying, is not just in our own homes, but we're reconnecting with all the people fighting in their own ways, who are loving their own lands, who are loving their own people and their own communities. And so all that is being held down will be lifted up, and everything that is being held up will be brought down. And our islands will be united, and the pillars, which is each and every one of us, the pillars will stand. So mahalo, mahalo.
All right, guys, well, that's it for your favorite land back baddie. Join me next time, or on my Instagram for more viral news. Peace. Let's get a photo real quick.